Welcome to the CFB Dynasty podcast with hosts Matt Knowles, Brian McElfresh, and Doug Gravely.
Oh, yeah. How are we doing out there, everybody? It's time for the CFBDynasty.com College Fantasy Football Podcast Playoff Edition. My name is Matt Knowles, as always, with the founder, the creator, the overlord, the ruler of all things, CFB Dynasty, Brian McElfresh. Brian, how are you feeling heading into Week 12, knowing that by the hair on your chinny chin chin, you snuck into the CFB home playoffs?
Oh, it felt good. Honestly, I trained for this going into the season in terms of having my roster kind of playoff ready. Didn't quite pan out, with injuries and such, and Caden Salter disappointing. And I trained to stay awake, but I couldn't stay awake the whole time. I found out in a potty break somewhere in the middle of the night that I squeaked by Uncle Joe by 6 points. He was one of the top scorers on the season. He was number 2 on the week, and to get in, I had to win, and then I had a tiebreaker for points on the season. So I only had a 3-point advantage going into the game on Josiah, who won his game against Josh Reed. But because I had enough points against Joe and enough points over Josiah, or Josh Reed, sorry, I snuck in. It was great.
Coming down to the end of the wire on the Saturday night, I had another league I'm in, MVP Pro. Shout out to the guys in MVP, where I had a weird situation where if I won, I might not have made it in. If I lost, I could have made it in, which doesn't make any sense. It was just the way the tiebreakers could have fallen. I had the same thing where I had to go late, found a way to make it in, and as long as you make it to the dance, that's all that matters. So why don't we, before we get into anything else, let's go to our leagues, and let's take a quick look and give a shout out to all the people that made the playoffs, and make sure if you're in one of those leagues and you didn't make the playoffs that you know what else is going on for us in the postseason, because everybody has a chance to continue to play.
Yeah, all right. I'll start in the Masters League, where
Masters League. We got shown up. I mean, you got Yumi and Doug doing this dang thing. Doug behind the scenes, all that. We can't even make our own dang playoffs. What is going on? So in this league, congrats to Saucy Dossie and Mike Dillingham for being the first and second seeds, getting that first week playoff bye. Harry Dog and Ruskers FC are going to be playing in the 3-6 game. And then CFB Tucker and Dragon Masters, a.k.a. Josiah, who we talked about earlier, in the 4-5 game. So for the rest of us, CFB Dynasty BMAC, Southeast Northwest U, Maverick, myself with the team in Sim Serpents, Doug Dynasty in Oaktown, we all are playing in a 3-week battle. Whatever teams score the most points, there's no head-to-head. Whoever scores the most in the 3-week combined, those two teams will not get relegated into the open league for next year. So everybody's still got a reason to be playing. I think Saucy Dossie and Mike Dillingham are showing that they've got the teams to beat in that league. But Harry Dog with 3,700 points, he's got the most points in the regular season.
Killing it.
Shout out to him.
Absolutely. And yeah, man, just problems for me there. First 2 rounds got me with Jaden Blue and Torrey Horton, and to be close and have a shot to get in there, it's not good enough. But yeah, Harry Dog there. Obviously, Dylan Sampson helped carry him. Josh Kelly's had a great year. DT Sheffield, Nick Nash. What a team. He's Mario Anderson, of course. He's going into the playoffs hot, and he might be the favorite to win it, even though he's the 3 seed. He's up there, obviously. I'm going to flip over to the Open League where here we go. Let's give a shout out to those guys that made the playoffs and will get that invite into the Masters League next year.
Yeah, so Steve, 77063, Victoria's Secret, top 2 seeds get the bye in the first round. Then you got El Antel 1983 going to be playing against Buffalo Shoes in one of the games, and the Gators win, and Moonlight Waffles, 2 guys that we know very well. going to be playing against each other, going to be dropping hammers, dropping elbows on each other, seeing who can get to that semifinal round. Again, everybody else in the bottom, from Nineveh Whalers number 7 all the way to the bottom, are playing in a 3-week battle. Whoever scores the most points combined in that 3-week setup is going to be, those two teams are going to also get promoted to the Masters League. So we'll have a potential for 16 teams in the Masters next year, which is going to be super fun and make it that much more competitive.
Yeah, again, Debbie Warehouse trending. I think he's going to be able to make it in. We'll see. Lastly, I'll flip over real quick to the home league. I snuck in. We've talked about it. Josh is just one game out, or really, he's just like 400 points out. But other than that, you're sitting up there pretty, number 1 seed going into the playoffs. How are you feeling about your odds to take home the championship?
I feel good about my team, but I'm also a little bit wary because I've got some weird bye weeks. I've got to get Tez Johnson back from injury because outside of Tez, my third wide receiver spot is a little bit rough. I feel fortunate because Joe, who's Villanova, Uncle Joe, I think he was 10-0, wasn't he? Joe was crushing it, and I was able to sneak in and steal that 1 seed from him. And one of the fun things we do in our leagues is that if you're the 1 seed, you get to pick your poison and pick your battle in the semifinal round. So whoever wins in the semis, I get to take a look at those rosters and pick who I think I have the best chance of beating. So will I pick right? Will I pick wrong? You never know. I do want to give a shout out. We bust on Doug for one, not being on the show all season, but Doug started off the season, look down at the bottom, UTSA Roadrunners. Doug was 0-10 at one point, looked like he forgot how to play fantasy football, ends the season strong with 4 consecutive wins to end the season. So shout out to Doug for not having a historically embarrassing season right there and getting himself back up into the hunt. So that's going to be interesting. I do love seeing Hawaii and Rutgers, Mike Davis and William Dong, who are known for their behind-the-scenes potential collusion when it comes to trades. Always rumors of collusion, having to go and battle each other in round 1. B-Mac, who do you think are going to be the teams in the home league that are going to win? Is it going to be you versus Josiah? You got the Dong father versus Mike Davis. Who's going to take home victories?
So, oh man, that's a tough one. And then, yeah, you've got the funny Hawaii Rutgers trade early on, which is definitely going to have a big effect because Hawaii traded away Mateer, who's our QB1 projected in rankings this week. I mean, in terms of overall points projected, Milrose up there, they're playing against Mercer, but you get it. So if I had to predict, I'd give myself a little baby edge over Oregon because he had a Nixon play already who scored 3.9. He did have Koziol go off at tight end with over 20 points there. So I think that's sort of break even-ish going into this week's games. My wide receivers are weak, man. Really weak with a couple key guys on breaks. I'm having to start Carnell Tate this week, so I don't feel great about that. I just need to kind of luck out and have him have a game like he had last week. I think like 5 catches, 80, 90 yards, but one of them needs to be for a touchdown.
I think the biggest thing for him is, his quarterback start, Nico Maliava. Looks like we were kind of talking before the show came on. Looks like he might be waiting until the weekend to decide who's going to be his starter. But with Nico injured, that's definitely going to be. He's got a couple of injured quarterbacks. That could be a big decision right there for him. But yeah, I think that Hawaii probably has an advantage in the other game. I think Hawaii has a little bit of advantage, even though his record is worse. He's one of the highest scoring teams in the league. I think that I think your game's a toss up, man. I feel like you guys play 10 times. You might win 5. Josiah might win 5.
I think that's right.
But
man. I like Hawaii and App State if I had to make predictions.
Yeah, and I'm not sure which one of those teams I want to be playing in week 13, man. I'm gonna have to. Yeah, I think your team might have a slight edge. I think it's all going to be, can Damon Ward get over that historically odd game last week in North Texas and Army, where Army had a possession last week, if you didn't see, that lasted 13 minutes and 54 seconds. So an entire quarter. Best way to stop the North Texas offense is to keep them off the field, and they did that for an entire quarter. So hopefully you can have a big bounce back. Keyshawn Johnson's going to be tough for you just because, I mean, he's not one of the other two Keyshawn Johnsons that have been great fantasy performers. He's Western Kentucky Keyshawn Johnson that who the heck knows who's going to get the ball in that offense.
So the algorithm won last week. We both went through it. That was my question. And we got that one wrong. I think he led my wide receivers in points. But yeah, it's just because he got the touchdown last week.
I went against the algorithm a couple times last week, and I was an idiot, and the algorithm was completely right. We talked about, we'll get more into it later. There was a running back that was at 60, and I'm like, there's no way this running back should be at 60, and I think he scored 3 points. The algorithm knew what it was talking about.
So is this going to the comment that I have up on the screen here with Jordan? Is that
let's
the
take
one?
A look. Let's take a look here.
It's quite hyperbolic there in terms of how he's speaking about me. It was just we got that one right on the podcast when it was the start sit segment there for Jordan Harden. He says, "What's up? Needed to start 2 last week. Taj Brooks, Ricky White, or AJ Turner. BMAC recommended Brooks and White, who scored 24.8 and 18.8 respectively. Turner had 3.2." And then it goes hyperbole.
Yeah, so Turner was not the 3.2, but man, I can see that. So maybe that whole BMAC has got amongst men. Maybe he's kind of feeling that vibe from the beginning of the show when I'm introducing you. You know what I'm saying? Maybe he's starting to. Yeah. Maybe. So his next comment. League commish scheduled the playoffs for week 13 and 14, but there are 6 teams. 1 and 2 seeds have a bye. So after week 14, we need another week. He said the app won't let him change it. Yeah, that's not a good thing. I would say he needs to get in contact with, most likely, if it's Fantrax, and see if Fantrax will allow you guys to do like a, just a score it in week 15 or something like that. But if he messed up and scheduled you 6 teams in the playoffs, maybe you just go with the top 2 scoring teams at the end of week 13, go to the playoffs. I don't know. That's never had that happen before in any of our leagues. I'm not sure how to get around that. That's rough. All right. So that's our review of our home Masters and Open League. Congrats to everybody that's playing this week. And hopefully you guys have a fun week. Hopefully nobody gets blown out to where they feel like their game gets cheated and they are able to get all their players in, nobody playing on an injury, and they can at least feel like they're playing at as full of a strength as they can. With that being said, BMAC, how about we go to this week's news and notes?
News and notes around college football.
All right, everybody. So here's some news and notes around college football. Quarterback Taylon Green for Arkansas. He's probable for this week's matchup versus Texas. Wide receiver Elijah Badger, running back Montrell Johnson, quarterback DJ Lagway of UF are all questionable versus LSU. BMAC has stated that it looks like DJ Lagway is trending towards playing. We'll talk about him a little bit more later. Quarterback Brady Cook for Missouri, doubtful this week. Running back Trevor Etienne, Georgia, questionable. Wide receiver Dante Thornton and quarterback Nico Iamaleava for Tennessee, questionable. Nico's still in concussion protocol, so that's going to be the thing that's going to make that determination. Running back Nick Singleton, Penn State, he is trending towards playing this week. Running back Jalen Glover for Utah has entered the transfer portal. Quarterback Taysom for Mancha, I'm going to just say that that's what it is for UMass. He is out for the year. Quarterback Thomas Castellanos for BC enters the portal after being benched. A weird late season portal transfer right there. And then quarterback Diego Paiva for Vandy, not at practice, so keep an eye on him. Plus, he has filed a lawsuit versus the NCAA. We're going to talk a little bit more about that right now. We hope you're able to take this information and apply it to your teams so we can help you take your fantasy experience to the next level. BMAC, let's go back to that Diego Paiva situation. So, he has filed a lawsuit against the NCAA because he says he was adversely affected because he does not have any more eligibility because they're counting his 2 years for junior college. And he said, hold on, I was not able to go and get NIL money at a junior college. I should have the same ability to be able to continue to get NIL money and get additional eligibility for that. What do you think about guys saying that their junior college years should not count against their overall college eligibility? Do you think that that's something that we should even be considering, or do you think that that's getting to the point of even more ridiculous than the situation we're already in?
Personally, I think it's ridiculous. Like, I would like it to get back to where it's 18 to 22-year-olds. I think you get into serious advantage for those teams that have a quarterback that's 24, 25, 26 years old. I think legalistically, though, I've seen a lawyer recently talking about this on X, where the way things are set up now, it's his belief that if you're in college, no matter what your age is, you should be able to play college football. But I think that's ridiculous.
Yeah, I can understand having medical red shirts. I can understand things like that. I think we're getting to the point now where COVID years are going to start getting, there's not going to be COVID years being discussed anymore. So that nonsense is going to be out. But I think at some point you have to have some kind of guidelines. I mean, hey, with the tight end for Miami that's in his 9th year, quarterbacks in their 7th year. Yeah, it feels like things are getting a little bit ridiculous in that. I feel like when the NCAA said that you could play 4 games and it's not going to count against your red shirt, I think that really started to cause a lot of confusion and nonsense. And it just adds to this crazy deck of rules that, what's the caveat that you're going to go try to apply to get an extra year. Got to get some kind of controls about it. I do think players need to be getting NIL money. I think NIL money is the right thing, but I feel like we've got to get some controls over it. Where we're at right now, where they're just talking about people are going to be offering guys coming into college $10 million as a quarterback is just ridiculous. I think it's absolutely absurd. So hopefully we get some controls.
Kind of on that note, like here we go with, a team like LSU where a lot of, fantasy owners have a Kyron Lacey, Nussmeier, whatever, Caden Durham. We're going to see, it's kind of a weird spread. They're only 5.5-point favorites against Florida, who just got the doors kicked in against Texas. Obviously Lagway and being at home and a little healthier changes things. But now that they're knocked out of the playoff, are they gonna play hard? Are they gonna play more, young players? It's gonna be interesting to see what kind of team LSU puts on the field in terms of how they play, because it's gonna affect fantasy playoffs a lot more, and it's gonna be this year. It's gonna be affected because this is when teams that had expectations are getting knocked out of all their hopes for getting in the playoff are gone.
Yeah, going to be very interesting to see. I agree with you on that. So why don't we go ahead, take a look at this week's rankings.
All right, cool. I'll throw this up on the screen. Now, I don't normally do this because we have had a lot of regular games, but I did roll Milroe up to the top manually. You'll see he's projected 0, and that's just because there is not a betting spread on Mercer. Mateer is the number 1 projected player at 38 fantasy points. And then again, this goes back to week 1 when you have these huge mismatches that happen every year in the fantasy playoffs. So a week early for Alabama this year where they're playing Mercer. I think there's another 1 or 2 games out there like that. Yeah, Auburn's playing UL Monroe, but that's more. Yeah, it's not so Peyton Thorne is now a top 10 fantasy start this week. But that's just according to the data. And of course, there are injuries and things at play that this doesn't know about. So someone like Nick Singleton, when we get to running backs, is something to kind of keep an eye on. But Milroe at 1, Mateer at 2, and then Braden Shager for Hawaii at number 3, McLeod at 4, Chandler Morris, who disappointed us all last week.
Well, I think. Yep.
Do you have any trepidation with Chandler Morris?
I do not. So last week, that's one of the ones we went against the algorithm and said, hey, I'm still going to be playing Chandler Morris. And then you had the historic 21 play drive, 13 minute and 54 seconds, where They just kept North Texas off the field. North Texas versus UTSA, any of those group of 5 level schools in Texas, when they play each other, are always going to be shootouts. So I think that North Texas versus UTSA is definitely a game to keep your eye on if you want somebody to be scoring you a lot of points. If you've got Morris, you've got Ward, I think you're in for a good potential performance out of them this week.
I hope so. Yeah, they're going against the 133rd ranked UTSA team against quarterbacks. So we'll see how they do on the road this week. Yeah, expecting better things out of Ward and Sheffield this week. Feldkamp there at 6. Tucker Gleason. Toledo hosting Central Michigan this week. He's projected at 28. So there's like a 10-point gap there between who we have at number 2 and who we have at number 7. So that's a huge gap, obviously, in points. And then it's pretty standard throughout the rest. Like Devin Dampier, that's one of the shootouts of the week this week. Peyton Thorne there. That's not standard, actually, at 9. Brett Gabbert at 10. Owen McCown for UTSA. At home there against North Texas at 11. Anything else stand out to you there at quarterback?
I think Dylan Gabriel at 16. I think Shador at 23. Those are interesting. Do I feel like there's going to be 22 quarterbacks this week? They're going to outperform Shador? I don't know. He is playing against a Power 5 defense in Utah. That's probably the reason why he's there.
Yep.
Dylan Gabriel playing against Wisconsin away. I think those are the reason they're there. I think that's why the algorithm, as the season has gone on, has really started to hone itself in, and there's good reasons why those quarterbacks are there. But I would have a hard time if I had Dylan Gabriel or Shador Sanders feeling like I was going to be starting other people over them unless I had somebody in the top 10 as well.
Yeah. Really, I mean, if you have Peyton Thorne, it's still risky. Anyways, Feldkamp, Chandler Morris, McLeod for sure. Those are starters to me over Shador this week.
Well, let's roll down to running backs, and definitely got something interesting to say about Ashton Jeanty there. I think one of the things that you're seeing out of Jeanty that you haven't seen out of running backs in recent years is because with him playing on a group of 5 team, not only being a Heisman Trophy front runner, but also having the outside chance of catching Barry Sanders, you're seeing him play a lot deeper into games than he normally would. There's blowouts, and they're still giving him the ball. They're still trying to get him scores because they got to get the stat lines up. If he's playing a weaker team and he's got 110 yards and 2 touchdowns, that's not going to tick anybody's radar at all. So Ashton Jeanty is probably going to be a 4-quarter running back for the rest of the season, no matter the score, no matter the game. And he's going to continue to be the number 1 fantasy performing player in college football, probably in the last 5 years, because he's getting playing so deep into the games.
Flipped over to our super ugly consistency tool here for running backs. 11 weeks into the season, Jeanty has been a top 4 fantasy running back 6 times. That's insane.
Unbelievable. Glad to see Omarion Hampton back up there after being on a bye last week.
Yep. He's projected 29 this week at number 2. Mario Anderson projected 28 at number 3. And Le'Veon Moss, who's hurt, right? I believe he is out. Yeah, so he's going to be out. So whoever there is starting at A&M would be basically projected up in his place and would be a great DFS value, I'm sure, there in DraftKings or FanDuel. Trey Stewart at 5, Jarquez Hunter at 6. And then Singleton, who's also, like we say, okay, he's trending towards playing. They're at Purdue. Penn State is absolutely in the mix for the playoff. They do obviously need to win the game, but it's projected to be a beatdown, 39.5-11 projected final score. So that plays into my the end of the show there. But Jaquavius Marks is 9, Brashard Smith is 10.
Yeah, I think Singleton is a weird one because I really like Singleton, but Singleton just doesn't feel like to me like any time that he's he's going to have a big week, he just hasn't felt like he's done what you need him to do in college this year. I feel like he's definitely got the pro potential. I feel like he's going to be a solid professional, but it doesn't feel like he's the guy that, anybody's like, oh, I won. Why'd you win? Because I played Nick Singleton. I don't feel like that's happened really at any point this year in any of the leagues.
Yeah, we'll check over at the consistency tool real quick. I'll use the search function, and Singleton's best finish so far is RB15 back in week 2. Otherwise, he has not been a top 36 running back at all this season.
I think Cameron Scatabo, him being there at 12, that's huge. If he's able to come back and play this week, I know there's a lot of people that probably missed out on the playoffs if they had him as one of their anchor running backs, not able to play last week. That was probably a big letdown for them. Otherwise, like I said, I feel like the tool is really doing a good job of understanding what the offensive game plan is, who they're playing. They playing home and away. I think that you've done a good job over there, BMAC, getting this algorithm working.
It's crazy. I'm going to scroll on down to wide receivers. We do have the top 100 running backs, the top 100 receivers there for you to kind of peruse through. And then, some of it you want to understand the context. Like we have DT Sheffield here at 10-ish. I've got to get the actual numerical one in there, and I will do that right now. But you got Ward, who was projected to be number 1, and he's come back last couple weeks. So we'll see how that kind of shakes out. I'm starting Sheffield or Ward in most scenarios either way. I love Ja'Cory Brooks this week. Here's who we have. So we've got Nash at number 1, Newton at 2, Ted Hurst at 3, Ted McMillan at 4, Felton at 5. What stands out to you at receiver?
I definitely think it's interesting seeing a North Texas receiver that is not Ward. It doesn't mean that nothing against Sheffield at all, but just Ward has gotten so much of the discussion. To see him not up at the top and Sheffield there at the top is very interesting. Definitely.
Yeah, it's that full season of baked in data.
Yeah.
All right, I've got the numbers in there now. Yeah, Sheffield's 9. Keandre Lambert-Smith is number 10. So it puts you in a weird situation. Like you're not excited about starting Lambert-Smith all season long, and then this wants you to start him here in the first round of the playoffs. That's rough. Obviously, Royals there at 11. He's out for the season. Ja'Cory Brooks at 14. We love Ricky White at 16. We love. And then Ashlock, who's not quite been who we wanted him to be all season. He's there at wide receiver 21.
I think Ashlock had a weird stat line last week. Wasn't it like 10 targets with 2 receptions, something absurd like that? Like, how's he getting so many targets? I mean, does it mean that the quarterback is just lining up with him? Is he getting balls being overthrown? Why is it that Ashlock is getting targeted so many times, yet he's not being able to turn those into receptions and yards? So at least he's getting a lot of targets, but hopefully they can start turning into some more receptions there. So his stat line last week, 10 targets, which is his most targets in a month, 2 receptions, 17 yards, and a 29-27 loss. So it wasn't like the offense was, not putting up points either. So, definitely got to see what's going on with why he's not able to turn more of those into receptions.
I flipped down to tight end. Obviously, Fannin number 1, Tyler Warren number 2. That's ho-hum. And forget this algorithm with Koziol. We had him projected at 15. He scored 20-something points against me already in the fantasy playoffs. So not excited about that, but he was a good start for sure.
All right, good stuff. So that is the rankings for this week. Hopefully you guys are going to be able to use that, and you're going to be able to, obviously, if there's a situation like Royals or somebody like that that's in the algorithm that is out for the year, do your homework a little bit. I mean, the algorithm doesn't know sometimes there's going to be an injury. So if we see them, we pull them out. But if we don't have time to pull them out, you got to make sure you're using this and alongside of some other common sense tools as well, like your brains.
Yeah.
All right. So
something and catch it early in the week. Obviously, feel free to hit me up and I will pull them out if I miss them.
So how about we talk about some shootouts of the week?
Shootouts of the week.
looking at last week quick. We had App State at Coastal was one of the shootouts of the week. It ended up being a 24-38 win by Coastal. Colorado at Texas Tech ended up being a 41-27 victory by Colorado. And then New Mexico at San Diego State didn't quite pan out. That was one of the, or I think it was the top Vegas combined points total there of 66.5. It ended up being a 21-16 New Mexico victory. And then the biggest letdown was our North Texas. That was supposed to be a shootout. Both teams were supposed to score right about 30, and it was 14-3 Army.
I can tell you right now, I'm not playing anybody against Army until Army shows me that that I'm not playing anybody against Army. That last week, the domination they had on such a good North Texas offense really opened my eyes. Doesn't mean that I'm never going to play anybody against Army, but until Army shows me they're going to be breaking down, that was an eye-opening performance by their defense.
Agreed. So this week, we've got four more here. Washington State against New Mexico. North Texas, again, we'll see, against UTSA. And then we've got Utah State, Hawaii. That one's not quite at a 60 combined points total there, but close. So I added it in there. And then West Virginia against Baylor. I think it has the exact same as Utah State, Hawaii. So not a ton of good shootouts this week. And yeah, a ton of bye weeks, like you suggested earlier. Maybe that was before the show.
Yeah, North Texas, UTSA, like we said earlier, that's the one. Whenever you've got group of 5 schools from Texas playing against each other, always seems like somebody just goes off or both teams go off. So that's one. That to me is the game I've got my eye on the most this week. All right, so that is the shootouts of the week. Now it's time for us to roll on down to the brisket lock.
It's time for the brisket lock.
All right, so last week, BMAC got back into brisket lock form. He said Jalen Milroe was going to be his brisket lock. Passing-wise, Jalen Milroe, absolutely horrible last week. 109 yards passing, no touchdowns. I put up 2 running backs last week that I would keep my eye on. Jalen Milroe's rushing as a quarterback obliterated both of my running backs. Jalen Milroe ends with 46.86 points because of his rushing. My running back, CJ Campbell from FAU, 13.2 points. Jonah Coleman from Washington, 3.7 points. Horrible. The verdict, BMAC in a 2-on-1 handicap beatdown wins the brisket lock championship of the world for last week. Unbelievable domination, embarrassing performance. How are you going to follow that up this week, BMAC?
That was a prime brisket. And Milroe in itself sounds like a cheat. The system had him as QB 16 last week, and I said he would finish top 5. He finished as QB 1. So that was a good one. And it got me into the playoffs. I needed every single touchdown to get me over Uncle Joe there. This week, I'm going with Katron Allen. I do think Penn State is going to be business-like. They're going to want to come in and beat down Purdue just like Vegas has them doing in like a 39-11 kind of game. Singleton, who came into the game last week, I think he returned a kick for a touchdown or something like that, and then was hurt and went to the locker room and didn't come back. I don't know how much they'll play him. They're definitely a different, better team with him on the field. But I think Katron Allen will get the bulk of the carries. I think it will be a beatdown. I think they will rely on him in the running game. At least that's how I see it kind of playing out. Who do you have this week?
This week was really, really tough for me to come up with a brisket lock because I feel like the algorithm, I feel like the rankings don't have anybody that is obvious outside of the top 15, 20 that I'm like, oh man, I can't believe this guy is down there. DJ Lagway for UF, I've picked him before. If he plays, That's who my brisket lock is going to be. I feel like teams coming off of these beatdowns. I feel like Florida is a different team when he's on the field. I think he's been by a mile their best quarterback this year. I would have taken him over Graham Mertz at the beginning of the season. So I feel like if Lagway plays, he's going to be my brisket lock. If we get late word that Lagway's not going to play, I'll switch up my brisket lock so we don't have the same situation that happened a couple weeks ago where my guy didn't play at the last minute. But that's who I'm going with. I think that your brisket lock is better than mine. I think it's going to be another beatdown week for you. We'll see what happens.
I hope I'm wrong. I mean, I don't hope I'm wrong, but I hope you're right, I'll say.
All right. So now we got something special for you. We're going to go to our DFS host battle. So but we have a little something special for you this week. And what is that? We got a special guest. It's going to be jumping in on the DFS host battle. You might know him as the Dong Father. You might know him as Hawaii. You might know him as I'm not Hawaii or I'm not Hawaiian, but we know him as the one, the only William Dong. He's going to be in here putting in a bracket. B-Mac, let's take a look at our DFS host battle.
All right. DFS host battle.
Okay, I've got them up on the screen here. We'll go through each lineup. This is the 12 o'clock games, and we're betting some money against each other. I'll start with William, since he doesn't have a mic in front of him here. He goes with Tyler Shuck at quarterback, 7,900. I think that's a great value at Stanford. They've been pretty bad against the pass. They do have to travel across the country, which stinks, and that creates a little bit of pause. But overall, love that. I think one of the great stacks of the season would be Shuck to Ja'Cory Brooks. But I like that value. I was going to try and squeeze him in as my super flex, but I couldn't quite make that happen. So I like to pick Isaac Brown, running back Louisville, at running back, obviously, Caden Durham also. And then at receiver, Aronde Gadsden's only 5,400, great value. Merriweather 4,800, wide receiver for Cal, and then Lejante Wester for Colorado at 6,100. Flex is Briningstool, the tight end for Clemson, and he stacks him up with Klubnik in the super flex.
All right, so I'll roll on and give my picks now. We both went with Shuck as our quarterback. LaQuint Allen from Syracuse at 8,600 running back. Maccabee for Purdue at 4,600. Had to find somebody that I could roll with at that second running back spot. Again, you already mentioned Gadsden. I have him in there at 5,400. Alec Manor for Stanford at 5,200. Felt like that was a great value. Isaiah Bond for Texas at 5,000. If he plays, that's a huge value. And then Will Shepherd, he had tons of targets at 3,600 for Colorado in my flex. Stacked him up with Shedeur Sanders as my super flex. Last week, I made a tactical mistake, and I did not have a quarterback in my super flex, and I was making sure that was not going to happen this week. So Shedeur was actually my first pick in the super flex. That's who I got. B-Mac, who are you throwing out there on the field against me and William Dong?
I'm assuming Lagway is going to play based on where the spread is at for the Florida LSU game. And it sounds like it's trending that way. So I'm rolling Lagway at 5,400 at home against LSU. Are they a broken team, or are they going to come in trying to win on fire and all that stuff as they did when they got crushed by Alabama last week? We'll see if Alabama crushed them. Sometimes that kind of a loss, when you lose your season goals and all that stuff, can spill over into the next game. And I'm hoping that's what happens as a Gator fan and a Lagway fan. So we'll see. Isaac Brown also in lockstep with William there at 6,700. Jeremiah Love, he scored a touchdown every game, and I don't see that changing against UVA this week. Just hopefully he'll have more yards per carry. Kind of a lowly game against Florida State last week, and really not as expected at all. I also have Isaiah Bond, Ja'Cory Brooks, and Tyler Warren at receiver, Katron Allen in my flex position at 4,900. He's pretty cheap there. And then James, who's starting quarterback for Boston College at SMU. I don't really know what I feel about that, honestly. At 6,700, it was between him and some kind of middling running backs that I wasn't super stoked about. So I went with the quarterback, and we'll just see what happens there.
Yeah, this week there was not a whole lot of guys in the DFS host battle that I was like, man, I could pick this guy or that guy. There was a bunch of positions I was like, man, who am I going to have to settle for? Just didn't feel like there was a lot of options out there to be able to fill in the spots. But let us know in the Discord. Let us know in the comments which one of those lineups do you think has the best chance of being able to win. Who do you guys want to roll with? If you had to pick my lineup, BMAX lineup, or the Dongfathers lineup, who do you think is the one who's going to be able to have the best chance of the victory? All right, so with that being said, looks like now is going to be the time for us to go to questions from the Peanut Gallery, starts and sits, whether it's a question in the chat, whether it's a question in Discord, a question from me or BMAC. BMAC, let's start with your question. You got a question for me.
Yep. All right, so running backs. Marquez Cooper, if you look at where he's at in the rankings, he gets a ton of touches, and that part is great. But Cooper in the rankings is projected RB 39 this week, 14.8 fantasy points, because they're only projected to score 17 points against UNLV on the road. UNLV's been good all season, so I don't see any reason for that to be wrong necessarily, other than hopefully Marquez Cooper gets a couple of those. But the game script is not good for a running back in a beatdown when you're on the wrong side of the beatdown. So that one gives me pause, and obviously this is a must-win game for me. So I'm going to give you 4 running backs, and you get to pick 2 of them.
Okay.
Marquez Cooper is one of them. LaQuint Allen, who's been consistent, lots of targets and touches through the air and the ground. So he's at Cal, though. Both of those guys are projected to be worse than Nick Singleton, who, if he is healthy and in his normal operation, is a top 10 start according to the algorithm this week. But again, hurt, went to the locker room, didn't come back and play. Trending okay, but how much does he play? Purdue's 132nd against running backs. So it's a great start. It's a beatdown for Penn State, likely, and that results in running backs getting a lot of touches. And then you've got Jeremiah Love against UVA.
So I think Love is probably one that I would go with, and I think that LaQuint Allen is who I would go with. We kind of talked about that earlier. As you showed in the consistency tool, Singleton has consistently not been in the top. And I feel like this, even though the tool is saying this is going to be the week that Singleton is going to break out, I feel like LaQuint Allen has a lot better chance. Cal gives up points, whether they're at home or they're away. Cal's still going to be giving up yards and points to opposing teams. So I think that LaQuint Allen has a chance to do what needs to be done in that game.
Let's see if this changes your mind at all. So I'll present it to you like this. If you're down to Love versus Cooper, and we're on so far. Like I've got Allen in there. I've got Singleton on the bench. Love versus Allen. And this is just what I look at when I'm going into a game where, the game script might suck and these numbers might kind of even out for this week. But in the last 5 weeks, Jeremiah Love has never had more than 14 carries in a game, whereas Marquez Cooper averages probably 23, 24 carries in a game. But probably won't get them this week.
Yeah, I can tell you this. I feel like, and I think that your argument there is definitely sound. Just looking at the numbers, Cooper definitely is getting a lot more touches, regardless of a win or a loss. So maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm wrong with Jeremiah Love there. So you know what? Maybe you have convinced me that Cooper is going to be the play over Love in that situation.
And really, it's early touchdown or bust, I feel like. And they're going to run Cooper heavy early. If he gets a running touchdown in the first 2 or 3 drives, like, it can be good and it can be close, and we'll see. Otherwise, UVA is a Jeremiah Love kind of game, honestly. So that's going to be the one I'm thinking about. And you would, if you had to pick right now.
If I had to pick right now, I think you might have convinced me. I think you might have convinced me to go Cooper.
Cooper.
I think you might have convinced me to go Cooper.
The other thing that I like, and it's just a stupid thing, but it's as a fantasy player, I like that it's the last game of the matchup between me and Josiah, where it's like, all right, if I'm down 10 and I'm going into that game, I've got the last shot. It doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter at all. But I for whatever reason,
it's nice to be able to come from behind. Nice to be able to come from behind. I feel you. I feel you.
All right. So, do you have any this week? Oh no, you don't have any in this league.
Well, no, we had another question that I definitely we're going to answer his question, but then I've got a follow up to that one. So Jordan Harden says, rest of the season, do you prefer DT Sheffield or Damon Ward? Picked up DT after Ward injury, but now Ward seems to be back. Thank you guys for everything. So you commented back to him in the chat, Ward for you, but it's a tough call.
Yeah.
After going and doing some research on that, I think it's going to be tough to not play DT Sheffield until the game script shows otherwise, because the number of targets that Sheffield is getting every week, he's averaging double-digit targets every game for the last month. That's a tough guy to not have in your lineup. I would feel more disappointed about having a guy who's getting double-digit targets not in my lineup and then do exactly what he's been doing than a guy coming off an injury that's only getting a max of 6 targets a game. So that's
the alternative is, hey, maybe Ward is your flex player, depending on who you've got there. And that is an offense where you could potentially start both. That
was my follow-up to you. If you have them both, if you've got Sheffield and Ward, do you start them both, or do you have a thought about what happened last week and be like, if the defense comes out there and shuts down the North Texas offense, do you have your almost all of your wide receivers shut down for the week? Would you play them both?
Always the conundrum. But yeah, I would. This week would be one that you could start them both, and we'll know tomorrow night. I mean, UTSA. 132nd against wide receivers. You could start them both this week for sure.
All right, you know what? Let me take a look. Let me see if I got one for you. Since you're asking me about your number 6 team sneaking into the playoffs, I'll go take a look at my number 6 team and MVP that snuck into the playoffs. Let me see where we go from there once my system decides to cooperate here. Come on, fan tracks.
Yeah, that's all right. So commissioner one early on, I don't know what the solution is there, but hopefully fan tracks can go in and fix that.
All right. So would you play Veldkamp, Alonzo Barnett, or Shedeur Sanders? Would you just go straight with our rankings, or would you look at those 3? Veldkamp home against Louisiana Tech, Barnett on the road at Old Dominion, or Shedeur Sanders versus Utah?
I know Utah hasn't been quite up to their standard, but I still, their logo there gives me some pause. Just that coaching staff has been so historically great defensively. If I had to bet anything in that, I would bet probably the under in that game. And I would run with Veldkamp there. I'm the most confident that they're gonna put up close to 5 touchdowns.
Yeah, I'm feeling it on that. I'm agreeing with you on that one as well. Yeah, it's going to be an interesting week. I don't think we got anything else. Hey, what's going on, Brett? Brett, I'm glad to see that you have jumped into the chat. Brett, you got any quick questions for us before we jump on out of here, my man? Glad to see that you have decided to chime in. Brett is somebody who seems to always be very active and a big part of the podcast. We really appreciate that. B-Mac, you got anything else you want to talk about while we see if Brett's got any questions for us?
No, man, I'm good. So good luck to everybody this week. Going to be a big one, and we'll see how it goes.
Yeah, and if you guys are down in the Port St. Lucie area, I will be a guest along with Steph Cannon down at PalmCon Treasure Coast in the Port St. Lucie area. We'll be down guests on Saturday and Sunday at that show. So if you're down there, come on and hang out with us at in Port St. Lucie at PalmCon Treasure Coast. All right, so it looks like that's it for the week. If you've got a playoff game this weekend, we hope the best of luck for you. I know BMAC hopes the best of luck for everybody not named Josiah.
True.
And let's have some fun this weekend and see what happens next week. We come back for the playoff semifinal week right here on the CFB Dynasty podcast. We'll see you next week, everybody.
Thank you for listening to the CFB Dynasty podcast. Help us out by subscribing on YouTube and reviewing us on your podcast network.